Equal's I stood in front of the mirror, carefully applying my signature red lipstick. The dark shade contrasted sharply with my fair complexion, giving me an air of confidence and power. I glanced at my reflection, taking in the sharp lines of my jaw and the determined set of my blue eyes. Today was the day I would finally confront the person who had wronged me all those years ago. As I stepped out of my apartment and onto the busy streets of New York City, I could feel the energy of the city pulsating around me. The honking of cars, the chatter of pedestrians, the distant sound of sirens, it all blended together to create a familiar cacophony that somehow felt comforting. I made my way to the upscale cafe where we had agreed to meet. The place was bustling with the lunch crowd, the smell of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries filling the air. I spotted him sitting at a table near the back, his familiar face sending a surge of emotions through me: anger, betrayal, and a hint of longing. I walked over to him, my heels clicking on the tiled floor. He looked up as I approached, a surprised expression flitting across his features before settling into a cautious smile. "Emily," he said, standing up to greet me. "I didn't think you would actually come." I forced a tight smile, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "I promised, didn't I?" "I always keep my promises." We sat down at the table, the tension between us almost palpable. He cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. "I suppose we should get straight to the point. You wanted to talk about what happened in college, right?" I nodded, my hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly that my knuckles turned white. "Yes, I want to know why you did it, why you betrayed me," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Emily, I know what I did was wrong. I was young and stupid, and I made a terrible mistake. But I swear I never meant to hurt you." I scoffed, unable to contain my anger any longer. "You didn't mean to hurt me. You stole my idea, my project, and passed it off as your own. You ruined my reputation, my future. How can you say you didn't mean to hurt me?" He looked down, shame flickering across his face. "I was desperate, Emily. I wanted to prove myself, to make a name for myself. I saw an opportunity and I took it without thinking about the consequences. I was selfish and foolish, and I deeply regret what I did." I shook my head, the anger rising like a tide within me. "Regret? Is that supposed to make everything okay? Do you have any idea what I went through because of your actions? The sleepless nights, the constant doubt, the feeling of being robbed of everything I had worked so hard for." He reached out a hand, his eyes pleading. "Emily, I know I can never fully make it up to you, but I want to try. I want to make amends, to make things right between us." I pulled my hand away, the icy resolve hardening in my heart. "It's too late for that, Jake. You took everything from me, and now it's time for you to pay the price." His eyes widened in fear, realizing the gravity of my words. "What do you mean, Emily? What are you going to do?" I leaned in close, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm going to make sure you suffer, Jake. Just like you made me suffer, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." With that, I stood up and walked away, leaving him sitting at the table, his face drained of color. The fire of revenge burned brightly within me, driving me forward with a single-minded purpose. Jake had betrayed me, but now it was my turn to show him the true meaning of betrayal, and I wouldn't stop until he had paid for his sins in full. As I walked out of the cafe and back onto the bustling streets of New York City, a sense of exhilaration coursed through me. The stage was set, the pieces in motion. This was only the beginning of my carefully crafted plan for revenge, and I couldn't wait to see it unfold. As I sat in my dimly lit apartment, the weight of what I had done settled heavily on my shoulders. I had crossed a line that I never thought I would, and now there was no turning back. The office building where I had planted the incriminating evidence was only a few blocks away, but it felt like a world apart. I could hear the distant sounds of the city outside my window, but they seemed muffled and far away, drowned out by the guilt and fear that consumed me. I had always prided myself on being a good person, someone who stood up for what was right and fought against injustice. But now I had become the very thing I hated most: a manipulator, a schemer, a vengeful force to be reckoned with. I tried to tell myself that it was necessary, that it was the only way to make things right, but deep down I knew that was just a lie I was telling myself to ease my conscience. As I wrestled with my thoughts, there was a sudden knock at the door. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Who could it be? I wasn't expecting anyone, and I certainly wasn't in the mood for visitors. I cautiously made my way to the door, hesitating for a moment before finally opening it. Standing on the other side was a woman I had never seen before. She was tall and slender, with piercing blue eyes that bore into mine. Her long black hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and she wore a simple black dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place where I had seen her before. "Emily Johnson," she asked, her voice low and melodious. "May I come in?" I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Something about this woman unnerved me, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her into my apartment. As she entered, a chill ran down my spine. There was something about her that felt off. She moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural, her eyes flickering around the room as if taking in every detail. I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew something important that I had been trying to keep hidden. "I know who you are, Emily Johnson," she said, her voice like velvet. "And I know what you've done." My blood ran cold. How could she possibly know? I had been so careful, so meticulous in my planning. There was no way she could have found out, and yet the look in her eyes told me that she knew more than she was letting on. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She smiled, a small, knowing smile that sent shivers down my spine. "I want to help you," she said. "I know what you're going through, Emily. I know the darkness that lurks within you, and I can show you how to embrace it." I recoiled, taking a step back. Who was this woman, and what was she talking about? How could she possibly understand what I was going through? I had never felt so alone, so lost in my own guilt and fear. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw something there that I couldn't ignore. It was a spark of understanding, a glimmer of recognition that sent a shock of recognition through me. This woman wasn't just a stranger, she was a kindred spirit, someone who had been where I was now and had come out the other side stronger, more powerful than ever. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She took a step closer, her eyes never leaving mine. "I can sense the darkness within you, Emily. I can feel the rage, the anger, the desire for revenge burning inside you. And I can help you unleash it. Together, we can make them pay for what they've done to you." I felt a surge of emotions wash over me: relief, excitement, fear. Could it be true? Could this woman really help me channel the rage and pain that had been consuming me for so long? It was a dangerous path to walk, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was the only path left to me. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling with uncertainty. She smiled, a smile that held both promise and menace. "My name is Lilith," she said, "and I am here to show you the way." I walked down the busy streets of New York City, my heart racing with anticipation. It had been weeks since I began my plan for revenge, and now it was finally time to take the next step. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the bustling city as the cool evening breeze blew through my hair. I made my way to the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, the place where it all began. The memories flooded back to me as I pushed open the squeaky, rusty door. The dimly lit interior was filled with shadows, a stark contrast to the vibrant city outside. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves as I stepped inside. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw him sitting in the corner, a smug grin on his face. James, the man who had wronged me all those years ago. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and arrogance. "Well, well, well, if it isn't little Emily," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "What brings you back to this dump?" I squared my shoulders, trying to appear confident despite the fear that gnawed at my insides. "You know why I'm here, James," I said, my voice steady. "It's time for you to pay for what you did to me." His smirk faltered for a moment before he recovered, leaning back in his chair casually. "And how do you plan to make me pay, huh? You're just a weak little girl." I clenched my fists, the rage bubbling up inside me. I may have been weak once, but not anymore. I've spent years plotting my revenge, and now it's finally time to make you suffer. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small vial, the liquid inside glowing a sickly green. James's eyes widened in fear as I advanced towards him, a wicked smile on my face. "What's that?" he stammered, his bravado gone. "This, James, is my sweetest revenge," I whispered, emptying the vial onto his skin. The moment the liquid touched him, he screamed in agony, his flesh bubbling and blistering as the poison took effect. I watched with satisfaction as he writhed in pain, begging for mercy, but there would be no mercy for him. I had endured years of suffering because of him, and now it was his turn to feel the same pain. I stood over him, my eyes cold and unyielding as I watched the poison work its deadly magic. Finally, as the last of his screams faded into the darkness, I turned and walked out of the warehouse, my heart lighter than it had been in years. James had paid for his sins, and I had finally found the closure I had been seeking for so long. But as I walked away, a nagging thought crept into the back of my mind. Was this truly the end of my quest for revenge, or was there more to come? Only time would tell as I stepped into the dimly lit room. The sound of my heels clicking against the hardwood floor echoed ominously. The air was heavy with the scent of stale cigarette smoke and whiskey. I glanced around, taking in the seedy atmosphere of the underground casino. The room was filled with a motley crew of gamblers, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of the neon lights hanging above the tables. I spotted him sitting at a poker table in the far corner of the room, his back turned to me. I felt a surge of adrenaline rush through me as I made my way towards him, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when I could finally confront the man who had destroyed my life. As I approached the table, he turned to look at me. His face was a mask of surprise and disbelief as he recognized me. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the wheels turning as he tried to figure out how I had found him. But I was one step ahead of him. I had spent months tracking him down, following every lead, every clue, determined to make him pay for what he had done to me. "Emily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" I stood tall, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "I'm here for you, James," I said, my voice cold and steady. "It's time for you to pay for what you did." His eyes widened in fear, and I could see the sweat glistening on his forehead. He knew that his time was up, that there was no escaping the reckoning that had finally caught up with him. Without another word, I reached into my purse and pulled out the evidence, the damning photos and documents that proved his guilt beyond a shadow of a doubt. I slammed the evidence down on the table in front of him, watching as his face turned pale with shock. "You thought you could get away with it, didn't you?" I said, my voice rising with anger. "You thought you could ruin my life and walk away without a care in the world. Well, not anymore, not today." The other players at the table had fallen silent, their eyes fixed on us as the tension in the room thickened. I could feel the weight of their stares, the electricity in the air as the final showdown between James and me unfolded before their eyes. James looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. "Emily, please," he begged. "I can explain. I can make it right." But I had heard enough of his lies, enough of his empty promises. I had spent sleepless nights and endless days plotting my revenge, waiting for this moment when I could finally make him pay for all the pain and suffering he had caused me. There would be no mercy, no second chances. He had made his bed, and now he would lie in it. I raised my hand and slapped him across the face, the sound reverberating through the room like a gunshot. The onlookers gasped in surprise, but I didn't care. I felt a surge of satisfaction as I watched the red mark bloom on his cheek, a physical reminder of the pain he had inflicted on me. "You think a simple apology will erase all the hurt and pain you've caused me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You think I will just forgive and forget? No, James, you will pay for what you did to me, and I will ensure that you never hurt anyone ever again." With a sense of finality, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving James to face the consequences of his actions. I could feel the eyes of the other players on me as I made my exit, their silent approval and respect evident in their eyes. I had come here seeking justice, seeking revenge, and I had achieved my goal. As I stepped out into the cool night air, a sense of liberation washed over me. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long had been lifted, replaced by a newfound sense of freedom and empowerment. I had taken control of my own destiny, of my own life, and no one would ever be able to take that away from me again. And as I walked away from the casino, my head held high and my heart filled with a quiet sense of satisfaction, I knew that this was only the beginning. There were still more scores to settle, more wrongs to right. But now, armed with the knowledge that I was capable of anything, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive, truly powerful. And with a steely determination in my heart, I set off into the night, ready to conquer whatever obstacles stood in my way. This was my story, my journey of revenge, and no one would ever be able to stop me from taking what was rightfully mine. I stumbled back in shock as the words echoed in the small room. My heart raced, my hands shaking as I clenched the edges of the wooden table in front of me. Jake stood before me, a sly smile dancing on his lips, reveling in my confusion. "You didn't think this was over, did you, Emily?" Jake taunted, his voice dripping with malice. "You may have thought you could outsmart me, but you should have known better." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I couldn't let him see how much his words affected me. "What are you talking about, Jake?" You're the one who should have known better than to mess with me. Jake chuckled, a cold sound that sent a shiver down my spine. Oh, I knew exactly what I was doing, and now it's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. I felt a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. What had Jake done? What was he planning? I had thought I had taken care of everything, ensuring that he would never bother me again. But now it seemed like I had underestimated him. Enough with the games, Jake. What do you want? I demanded, my voice stronger than I felt inside. Jake leaned in closer, his eyes gleaming with a twisted sense of satisfaction. I want you to suffer, Emily, just like I did, just like you made me suffer. I recoiled at his words, the memory of our tumultuous past rushing back to me. I had thought I had put it behind me, moved on with my life. But Jake's presence here, his words cutting through me like a knife, reminded me that the past could never truly be buried. You don't have any power over me, Jake. I won't let you control me anymore, I said, trying to sound strong and defiant. Jake laughed, a harsh sound that grated on my nerves. Oh, but I do have power over you, Emily, and you're about to find out just how much. With a sudden movement, Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver key. My eyes widened as I recognized it instantly. It was the key to my safe deposit box, the one where I had hidden all of my most valuable possessions, including the evidence I had against him. How did you get that? I demanded, my voice rising in panic. Jake smirked, twirling the key between his fingers. Let's just say I have my ways, and now it's time for you to pay the price for trying to ruin me. My mind raced, trying to come up with a plan, a way out of this situation. But before I could form a coherent thought, Jake was already moving towards the door, the key clutched tightly in his hand. You have until midnight to bring me what I want, Emily, or else you'll regret it, he said, his voice a menacing whisper. And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone in the room, my world crumbling around me. I knew I had no choice but to comply with his demands. If I didn't, everything I had worked for would be destroyed in an instant. But as I sat there, staring at the empty space where Jake had stood, a fire ignited inside of me. I refused to let him win, to let him destroy me like he had tried to so many times before. I would find a way out of this, a way to turn the tables on him once and for all. Determined, I stood up, my mind racing with possibilities. I may have been backed into a corner, but I was not beaten yet. I had faced worse challenges in my life, and I had always come out on top. As I made my way out of the room, a plan began to form in my mind. It was risky, it was dangerous, but it was the only way to take back control of my life and finally put an end to Jake's reign of terror. I had less than 12 hours to pull it off, but I was ready. With a renewed sense of purpose, I set out into the night, determined to face the consequences head-on and come out victorious in the end. Jake may have thought he had me trapped, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. I was Emily Johnson, and I was not someone to be messed with. And by the time the sun rose the next morning, he would know that all too well I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. The bruises on my face had started to fade, but the emotional scars ran deep. I couldn't believe that I had let myself fall into such a dangerous situation. But now, everything was different. I was different. As I got ready for the day, my mind kept replaying the events that had led me to this moment. The betrayal, the pain, the anger. But amidst all the darkness, there was a glimmer of hope. Hope for redemption, for forgiveness, for a chance to make things right. I took a deep breath and headed out to meet with Peter, the man who had helped me through it all. He had been there for me when I needed someone the most, and now he was guiding me towards closure. When I arrived at the cafe where we had agreed to meet, Peter was already there, sitting at a table in the corner. I walked over and took a seat across from him, feeling a mix of nervousness and determination. Hey, Emily, Peter greeted me with a warm smile. How are you feeling today? I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to answer. I'm getting there, I finally replied. Peter nodded understandingly. It's a process, Emily. Healing takes time. But I believe in you, and I know that you have the strength to overcome this. His words were like a balm to my wounded soul. I smiled gratefully at him, grateful for his unwavering support. I have something for you, Peter said, reaching into his bag and pulling out a small envelope. This is from someone who wants to make amends. I took the envelope from him, my heart pounding in my chest. I opened it slowly, not sure what to expect. Inside, there was a handwritten letter, the words carefully crafted on the paper. I read the letter, my eyes filling with tears. It was from Mark, my ex-boyfriend. He apologized for what he had done, for the pain he had caused me. He admitted his mistakes and asked for my forgiveness. I looked up at Peter, my emotions in turmoil. I don't know what to do, I whispered. Peter placed a comforting hand on mine. Emily, forgiveness is not about giving someone else a second chance. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of hate and resentment. It's about letting go of the pain and moving forward with your life. His words resonated with me, and I knew that he was right. I needed to let go of the anger and the hurt to find peace within myself. Taking a deep breath, I made a decision. I forgive him, I said, the words firm and resolute. Peter smiled at me, his eyes filled with pride. That's the first step, Emily. Now let's work on the next one. And so, we spent the rest of the afternoon talking and planning. Peter helped me devise a strategy to confront my past, to face my fears head-on. With his guidance, I felt stronger and more confident than I had in a long time. As the sun began to set, I realized that I was ready. Ready to confront the demons of my past, ready to move forward with my life. And as I walked out of the cafe, a sense of peace washed over me, filling me with hope for the future. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and obstacles. But with Peter by my side, I was no longer afraid. I was ready to face whatever lay ahead, to embrace the journey towards redemption and forgiveness. And as I looked up at the sky, the first stars beginning to twinkle in the twilight, I knew that everything would be okay. I was finally free as I stood in the abandoned warehouse. The sound of dripping water echoed through the dimly lit room. The air was stale, filled with a musty odor that made my nose wrinkle in disgust. I could feel the tension in the room, thick and suffocating, as I waited for him to arrive. I had been planning this moment for years, and now that it was finally here, I couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I heard the sound of footsteps approaching, and my heart began to race. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my nerves as the door swung open, revealing him standing before me. His face was a mask of surprise and confusion, but I could see the fear lurking in his eyes. "Emily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" I took a step forward, my eyes locked on his. "I'm here for what you took from me," I said, my voice cold and controlled. "You thought you could destroy my life and get away with it, but you were wrong. I've spent years planning this moment, and now it's time for you to pay for what you've done." He tried to back away, but I moved quickly, blocking his path. "You can't run from me anymore," I said, my voice rising with each word. "You can't hide from the consequences of your actions." He looked at me, his eyes wide with fear and disbelief. "I never meant to hurt you, Emily," he said, his voice pleading. "I was just trying to protect myself. You have to understand." But I wasn't interested in his excuses. I had spent years suffering because of him, and now it was time for him to suffer in return. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small vial, holding it up for him to see. "Do you know what this is?" I asked, my voice low and menacing. "This, my dear, is a little something I like to call revenge, and you're about to experience it in full force." I could see the realization dawning in his eyes, the fear turning to panic as he tried to scramble away, but it was too late. I grabbed him by the collar, forcing him to stay put as I uncorked the vial and poured the contents over him. The liquid was thick and viscous, staining his clothes and skin as he struggled beneath my grip. And then, as the last drop fell from the vial, I watched in satisfaction as the transformation began. His skin began to bubble and warp, his features contorting in pain as he screamed out in agony. The vial contained a potent concoction, one that I had spent years perfecting, designed to inflict the same suffering on him that he had inflicted on me. As the transformation reached its peak, I released my grip on him, stepping back to watch as he writhed on the floor, his body contorting in impossible ways. The screams echoed through the warehouse, a symphony of pain and despair that filled me with a sense of satisfaction unlike anything I had ever known. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it was over. His body lay still on the floor, a twisted and broken shell of the man he had once been. I stood over him, staring down at his ruined form with a sense of vindication that filled me to the core. "You should have thought twice before crossing me," I said, my voice cold and final. "Now you know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of your own cruelty." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving him lying there in the darkness. A warning to anyone who dared to underestimate the power of a woman scorned. I stood at the edge of the rooftop. The city sprawled out before me like a vast maze of twinkling lights. The wind whipped through my hair, sending a shiver down my spine. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I would finally confront my nemesis and exact my revenge. I checked the time on my watch, 11:55 p.m. The deadline was approaching quickly, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I straightened my shoulders, steeling myself for what was to come. A door creaked open behind me, and I turned to see him step out onto the rooftop. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw me standing there, a smirk playing on my lips. "Well, well, well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter," he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "I must say I'm impressed you made it this far, but it ends here, Emily." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "Not before I have my say, David," I replied, my voice cold and steady. "You may have thought you could destroy me, but I will not be taken down so easily." He laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the night. "Oh, please spare me the melodrama. You were always so dramatic, Emily, always seeking attention, always trying to one-up me." I took a step closer to him, my eyes boring into his. "You ruined my life, David. You destroyed everything I held dear, and now it's time for you to pay." He raised an eyebrow, his smirk never faltering. "And how do you plan on making me pay him? Are you going to push me off this rooftop? Is that your grand revenge?" I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. "No, David, death would be too easy for you. I want you to suffer like I suffered. I want you to feel the pain, the betrayal, the loneliness that I felt." His eyes narrowed, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "You can't be serious. You wouldn't dare." But before he could finish his sentence, I lunged at him, my fingers wrapping around his throat. I pushed him back against the edge of the rooftop, his eyes widening in shock. "You think you can control me, manipulate me, break me. But you were wrong, David. You were always wrong," I hissed, my grip tightening. He struggled against me, gasping for air as panic set in. "Emily, please, you don't want to do this." "Oh, but I do," I spat, my voice icy and determined. "You took everything from me, David, and now I'm taking everything from you." With a final surge of strength, I shoved him over the edge of the rooftop, watching as he plummeted down into the darkness below. His screams echoed in the night, a chilling reminder of the pain he had inflicted on me. I stood there, breathing heavily as the adrenaline slowly ebbed away. The city below seemed to go silent, the only sound the faint wail of sirens in the distance. I had done it. I had finally gotten my revenge. But as I looked out at the city before me, a sense of emptiness washed over me. The anger, the hatred, the desire for revenge, it had consumed me for so long. And now that it was over, I wasn't sure what was left. I turned and walked back towards the door, my footsteps echoing in the empty rooftop. As I stepped inside, the door closing behind me, I knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in my life. A new horizon stretched out before me, filled with possibilities, with opportunities. And as I walked away from the rooftop, from the past that had haunted me for so long, I knew that I was finally free. Free from the chains of revenge, free from the burden of hatred. I was finally at peace. And as the first light of dawn began to break over the city, I knew that I was ready to embrace whatever the future held for me. The end.